In an industry stuffed with marketing bullshit, empty promises, and shiny-suited liars, one woman's had enough. She knows what it's like to have the wrong clients, no money, and no time for fun. But she also knows how to fix it. And on the Business for Superheroes show, she promises to tell the down and dirty truth about business, sales, and running away with the circus. Here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the Business for Superheroes show. I'm Vicky Fraser and this is Joe.
Hello.
Hi. So today we're going to be talking about the power of habits. I don't even know why we're giggling here.
I have no idea.
No. Okay. Cool. So what's your worst habit, Joe?
My worst habit?
Yeah.
Thanks for the warning.
That's okay. Okay, what's my worst habit?
Oh God, this seems dangerous. I don't like this podcast. Oh, Christ. You're
Don't be afraid, it's fine.
Oh, this is bad. It's bad. My husband's alarm bells are ringing.
No, it's fine. Go on.
You work on your own, and then sometimes when I get home from work, you hit me with a barrage of consciousness about all of the things ever.
Okay.
And that's kind of scary.
Fine. No, I'm just kidding. I do that, that's true. Okay, so that is...
I'm not sure that's a habit.
No, I don't know. It probably is, because the trigger would be you coming home and me having had nobody to talk to all day except for the cats, and they don't talk back. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should talk to the cats more.
Well, maybe you should teach them to talk back.
Maybe I should teach them to talk back. That would be good. Okay, well, instead, you used to smoke.
I used to smoke.
You did. And you stopped smoking.
I did.
How did you stop smoking?
Where I worked, it was a big industrial site. It was like 40 acres or something in Birmingham, and you weren't allowed to smoke in the buildings, but you were allowed to smoke in between the buildings. There were many buildings on this site. Mm-hmm. So what you would do is you would find reasons for striding manfully from one place to another place whilst having a cigarette.
Striding manfully.
Striding manfully.
Okay.
So you would walk from one place to another and have a cigarette, and it was great. And then when the laws were changing and they were making it illegal to smoke at work except in designated areas, they started putting up these horrible little bus shelters.
Smoking sheds.
And that took away all of the fun of striding manfully around the place with a cigarette, and meant you had to huddle in the drizzle with a whole bunch of other smokers and talk to people you didn't necessarily want to talk to, become one of the people you didn't necessarily want to be, and generally huddle in a little bus shelter looking like a sad sack.
Sounds great.
Didn't want to do that.
Okay.
So I stopped. Okay,
so you stopped, but how did you stop? Because presumably you didn't just smoke when you were at work.
No, I smoked all the time. I smoked loads. I used patches for a while to take away some of the edge, and yeah, I just resisted the temptation. I actually got into a position where I was quite enjoying being angry about not smoking.
Okay, and then you became a smug ex-smoker.
Then I became a smug ex-smoker, and now I tell my story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to kind of divert that a little bit, because I used to smoke as well many moons ago, and way before I met you.
You still smoked a little bit when you met me?
When I was drunk.
When you were drunk.
And that's the thing. It's all about triggers. Habits are all about triggers. So my triggers for smoking, well, I still get this really weird feeling. You know when we're on holiday somewhere hot and we're sitting having a beer outside in the sunshine? Mm-hmm. I still, just for a second, get that, oh, where are my cigarettes?
Well, it's the same thing. I get the same thing, because about the time that I stopped smoking, I stopped using trains to get to and from work. So now when I get off a train, I want a cigarette, because I haven't kind of rewritten that habit yet, because I don't spend any time on trains. So every time I step off a train, I want a cigarette. And
that, dear listener, was a beautiful segue into what we're going to talk about in this podcast, which is the habit loop. It's called the habit loop.
That was lucky.
Yeah, I know. You'd almost think I planned these things, wouldn't you?
Jeepers.
I know. Okay, habit loops.
Habit loops.
Our lives are divided into, and this is very simplistic, obviously, but our lives are divided into things we can control and things we can't control.
Right.
Broadly. Obviously, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Well, it's two very large categorizations, but they're probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's certain stuff that you can do something about, and there's certain stuff that you can't. You can't really do anything about the state of the economy. Not directly. You can't really do much about, the government directly. You can vote and all the rest of it, but there's, you can't control a decision that's made.
Your decision does not change it. Your decision might add weight to millions of other people's decisions.
Yeah. So, you can think about this as you choose the stuff that you can't control. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it.
Sure.
And here's a case in point. Do you remember the complete dickhead?
Was this the worst customer in the world?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him.
Do you remember how upset I was?
Yes.
Oh, man. So I had the worst customer in the world who didn't pay me or, in fact, any other marketing bod that he's ever had working for him. Certainly not going to name names because that would open me up to, all kinds of legal shenanigans. But, suffice to say he was a complete arse biscuit.
And it was what he did, wasn't it? He seemed to employ people to do things for him and then neglect to pay them.
Yeah, and I don't
Repeatedly.
Yeah, I don't get to feel special here because I certainly wasn't the first, and I'm not I don't think I'm the last from what I've heard. Anyway, I couldn't really control what he did to me because I didn't have enough information in advance. And even if I had, I tend to be I used to be quite trusting. I assumed that most people are very decent. Most people are very decent. So I couldn't control his behaviour towards me. But what I realised after talking to one of my mentors was that I could totally control how I reacted to it. And I spent a couple of days being really upset and then chose not to be upset anymore, basically. So, you can be a victim and nobody's ever going to blame you for being a victim, but you choose whether or not you're going to stay a victim, which I think is quite an important thing. And the reason I'm talking about this is partly because I find it very interesting because there are some people who seem to enjoy being professional victims.
Yes.
And what happens to them is not their fault. And I think people who blame the victim are assholes. But how you choose to deal with it is entirely up to you.
And how much you choose to let it hurt you.
And affect you, yeah. Why would you want to give somebody that much power over you?
Don't know.
No, I gave...
You did for a bit, though.
I did, yeah, I know I did. Totally did. And do you remember on Christmas Eve when the guy who was very briefly in my inner circle said some really shitty... Sent me a really abusive email. And I let it bother me for half a day because I didn't tell you about it, did I?
Yeah.
And I should have just told you earlier because...
Foolish.
Joe's very wise. He points out that, this is not my problem. And also, he points out, by the way, when stuff is my problem and I'm being a dick.
We're talking about a thing you haven't explained now.
Yeah, but I'm not going to explain it here because it was a thing. It upset me and I let it upset me. So it wasn't my fault that it happened, but it was my fault that I carried on being upset.
Sure.
Basically. And the reason that I'm blathering on about this is because all of this podcast is all about making changes to situations yourself. And, it's like the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's my favourite prayer, and I'll take God right out of it because I don't think there is one, basically. But it's a nice piece of wisdom that I like it.
Sure, it is.
And so, basically you can stop wasting the time and energy on stuff that you can't do anything about and focus your time and energy on the stuff that you can do something about. And a lot of that is to do with the power of habit, because there are, this podcast is all about, really, it's all about the really basically unsexy truth about success and what success is all about. And so now I'm going to ask you about inspirational quotes.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm gonna ask you if you've ever noticed that the people who post the most inspirational quotes, their level of success is directly inversely proportional to how successful they are.
It's an interesting theory.
It is an interesting theory.
Sadly, all of the people who post them on Facebook, I defriend or hide. So I can't really do much research on that.
And when we're talking about motivational bollocks quotes here, dear listener, I'm talking about this. We're looking now at, I've typed inspirational quotes into Google and hit image search, and we're now looking at a variety of nauseating nastiness, really. So, Joe, pick one at random, read it.
Be somebody who makes everybody feel like a somebody.
Nice. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Take the moment and make it perfect. Happiness is found when you stop comparing yourself to other people. That's actually true. And I'm not saying that these things aren't true, by the way, because a lot of the inspirational quotes are very nice and, all the rest of it. But something that I've noticed about people who post a lot of inspirational quotes, particularly on Facebook, because Facebook is like a breeding ground for inspirational quotes, is that they'll post these inspirational quotes, but they won't actually do anything about it.
They've posted a quote.
Exactly. Exactly.
Posted a bloody quote, they don't need to do anything.
I know. And so the same people are always making plans, and they're saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And successful people make plans as well, but they don't just talk about their plans, they actually do something about it. And I used to be I still do this a little bit. I make plans and then I don't do them, but I think I do more stuff than I don't do.
Yes, I think that's true.
Good, I'm glad. I got worried then for a second. You paused. I was like, oh shit.
I have seen some long lists.
I do have long lists. You know, lists are good. I'm a little bit OCD. That's fine. So, yeah, basically good intentions are worthless on their own, and success requires action.
And action is not posting it on Facebook.
No, it's not.
Nor is it talking about it.
No.
Nor is it thinking about it.
No.
It's doing something.
It's doing something. Which is where we come down to consistency, because the really unsexy truth about success is it's all about consistency. It's all about doing ordinary things well over and over again, rather than doing an extraordinary thing once. If you look at Olympic athletes, when you get up to a kind of Olympic level, they're all much of a muchness. They're about the same strength. They're about the same physical ability, whatever it is that they're doing. The difference is made. It's not natural talent that makes the difference. The difference is made in how consistent they are. And how often they can do the same thing again and again. If you think about I fucking hate golf. I don't know why I'm using golf as an example. But if you think about a pro golfer, their success is not predicated on whether they're more talented than the next pro golfer.
Have you ever met a golfer who isn't a twat? Sorry. Probably edit that out.
Yes, I've met lots.
Really?
That's a terrible thing to say.
Okay. Maybe just me.
Who's a twat?
Yes, I'm a twat. Sorry.
That's a
Moving
terrible
on.
thing to say. Anyway, I do think golf is a pointless sport, but that's beside the point. People like golf. My point was that you have neatly kicked into, the long grass.
Fired into the rough, I think.
Fired it into the rough.
Yeah, there you go.
By the way, we had a really fun game of miniature golf on Boxing Day. Do you not remember that?
That was crazy golf.
Crazy golf, yeah.
Crazy golf is not pointless. There's some serious skill involved in that.
I won, by the way.
You did not.
I totally did. Anyway, my point is that between one pro golfer and the next, the difference isn't natural talent. The difference is how many times pro golfer A has practiced all of his strokes. And it's how... It's repetition. It's being able to replicate.
How consistently they can do something.
Yeah, because you've got to play 18 rounds of golf. And you've got to be able to... 18 holes of golf. So this is how little I know about golf. Play 18 holes of golf. You've got to be consistent throughout the match. That's the key. It's no good sinking 2 holes in one and then just playing like
shit for the rest
15 15 shots for each of the other, the 2 holes in one don't make you anything but lucky.
Yeah.
Really.
Occasionally brilliant is no good.
Yeah. It's how I play pool. I have flashes of brilliance, but the rest of it's rubbish. Unless I'm drunk.
Then it's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, my point is that we have two selves. We have a conscious self and an unconscious self, and I'm not disappearing into the realm of woo-woo here. I am talking about how our brains work. It's really, really interesting, actually. If you think about it, we would never get out of bed in the morning. We would never get out of our driveways in the morning if we didn't have an unconscious self and a conscious self. Because when you get into the car in the morning, what do you do? Like, do you think about every action that you take? Or do you just start the car and drive off?
Just start the car and drive off.
Yeah. Can you imagine how long remember when you were learning to drive? And you would be thinking about everything. It's like, I've got to check the mirror.
You're really busy and there's stuff going on everywhere.
Yeah, it's really stressful. Can you imagine if every car journey was like that? You'd never get anywhere.
No, we'd all be doing 25 mile an hour and 50.
Yeah, maybe that's what's happened recently. Maybe everybody's... Anyway, my point is that your unconscious brain takes over your driving task, and it takes over your morning routine as well. So, when I tumble out of bed in the morning, I tumble into the shower and I brush my teeth, and you don't think about these things. You just...
Feed the cats, make tea.
Yeah, you just do them. So, when you're on a long and familiar car journey, have you ever just woken up halfway through and thought
You
twice?
do sometimes just, you kind of think, gosh, how did I get home? Yeah, didn't realise I got this far.
Yeah. And you think, I don't remember any of the last 10 minutes of the journey, which is kind of alarming, really. And there are, it's a good evolutionary trait, because if you didn't have it, your habits run your life. In fact, your habits run pretty much 40% of what you do, and you don't have much conscious control over most of what you do, which is quite alarming, really. It's amazing that more accidents don't happen when you think of it like that. Our brains are, they work very well. So if you think back to, think about teaching somebody to climb. I was thinking about this the other day because I teach a pole class. And the basic moves in pole they become habit. So it's the inverting and the gripping with your, when you've got the pole behind your knee, gripping with your hands, all of that stuff becomes habit. So when you're teaching newbies to do pole, it becomes actually quite difficult to explain what you're doing.
Because you're not really doing it, your subconscious is doing it.
Exactly. And so you teach people to climb quite often, don't you? Because we bring newbies. Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, really obvious things like stand on that and reach for that thing and...
Straighten your leg.
And why are you leaning that way and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that rapidly becomes subconscious.
Yeah.
Just the way you move.
So here's a top tip for you. If you train other people, put yourself... Think your way through all of the basic stuff that you think is really basic, because it's actually not really basic to people who are new at it. And that will make you a much better teacher and a much better trainer, because since I've been studying this stuff and the power of habit, I know that I've become a much better pole teacher for a start, because my students have told me that I am, because I've actually thought and broken it down right into the basic stuff and
pulled the stuff out of your subconscious and brought it back into the conscious.
Exactly. So with that in mind, with this 40% of what you do being habit, it kind of makes sense to make sure that they're good habits, doesn't it? Because you don't really want to be spending all of your time on stuff that's damaging and self-destructive and all the rest of it, like smoking and whatnot. Okay. And, walking past a cupcake and picking it up and putting it in your face. There's chocolate on the table right now, and it's just, we've got a chest full of Christmas chocolate still. It's bad.
It's ridiculous.
So basically, almost everything we do is habit, because we are exposed to about 11,000 signals at any one time in our senses, so sight and hearing and smell and all the rest of it. There's about 11,000 of them at once, but we only consciously process about 40 of them, because we can physically only, can you imagine trying to physically think about 11,000 things at once? Although sometimes I feel like I'm doing that.
Sometimes it looks like you're doing that.
Thanks. So basically, almost everything we do is habit. And, think about running. we go running. Joe and I go running, don't we?
I hate running.
I knew you were going to say that. Joe hates running. The thing is, though, I hate the first mile every single time. I hate it. And I think it's because my brain takes that long to convince my body that actually my body isn't going to die and that we really are going to do this. And after that, I start to feel okay about the whole thing. And I always feel good at the end of it as well. And
yeah, I can feel quite good at the end of the run as well. I just hate running. It's for children and criminals. It's rubbish.
Okay, I love running. This is by the way, this is my life. Every time I say should we go for a run, all I get is I hate running. Rubbish.
It's rubbish. It's horrible.
Anyway. But why do you feel good at the end of it? You feel good at the end of it because exercise releases endorphins, which make you happy. And you feel good because you're in a habit loop.
I think you're in a habit loop. I think I'm still at the stage where I'm dragging myself out and not having fun. But
that's why it's worth persevering, because eventually you will be in a habit loop, and you will feel worse by not going for a run than you do by dragging. Your good habits start when it's more painful to not do it than it is to drag yourself out and start doing it.
I was pretty much there when we did that half marathon the other year.
Were you?
Yeah, I was almost enjoying it.
Cool.
Almost.
That's the first time he's ever told me that, guys. He's going to regret that, because I'm about to enter him into the Hampton Palace half marathon, which I am doing on the 20th of March.
That's like 2 months away.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Joe's an annoyingly good runner. He's always faster than me, and he's always...
I used to be a child, and sometimes I'm a criminal. I've got a lot of experience.
Anyway, I'm going to talk about useful things now, like the habit loop. So the habit loop is trigger, routine, and reward. Here's the bad news. You can't break a habit. Ever. Joe's making a sad face now.
I am.
You can't break a habit. Habits even survive brain damage. And there's a really good story in the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. That's Duhigg.
Cool name.
I know, it's a great name. I strongly recommend that you read this book, because it will probably transform your life, because it's changed the way that I do an awful lot of stuff, and it's made a massive difference to how much I get done, and it's given me an endless supply of interesting stories to tell people.
Such as
the guy with brain damage. So he had, I can't actually remember what illness he had, but whatever illness he had, it damaged the part of his brain that deals with memory. So he'd forgotten everything from the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. He could remember his wife and he could remember, I think he could remember his kids, but he couldn't remember the house that they'd moved into fairly recently. So when the psychologist or the neuroscientist was there with him, his doctor basically was there with him in the house, they were saying, well, what do you do? You know, can you tell me how to get around your house? Map out your house for me. And the guy couldn't. He couldn't map out his house. He couldn't tell the doctor where the kitchen was, where the bathroom was, where anything was. He didn't know any of the local area. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was difficult for him. And so the doctor said, well, what do you do when you're hungry? And the guy got up, walked into the kitchen, went to the fridge. Because it was a habit, because the brain had formed a habit subconsciously that his conscious brain couldn't access.
All right.
Yeah, this is why it's absolutely fascinating stuff. And the first time he went out for a walk on his own, his wife panicked because obviously he didn't know the area and he'd just like disappeared off and taken himself for a walk. But he came back because his automatic pilot unconscious brain had said, oh, I want to go for a walk. And he'd gone off for a walk around the block and had come back perfectly fine because his unconscious brain was accessing his habit loops. Really, really interesting stuff. Cool. Which, you know, just goes to show how strong your habits are. Once you've formed them, you can't break them. The good news is that you can change them.
Okay.
Because you've got the trigger and the reward will always stay the same. So say, for example, you're at work and you're bored. And the trigger is that you're bored. So you'll get up, stop what you're doing, wander off and get a cookie or a cupcake or something. Mm-hmm. And the reward is the good feeling that the cookie gives you.
Sugary goodness. Sugary goodness,
yeah. And that the reward that the cookie gives you is, you know, feeling good about it. What if you just change the routine? Because the routine is going to get a biscuit. Mm-hmm. So when you feel bored, you get up and instead of getting a biscuit, you grab a glass of water and you have a chat with your co-worker. You're going to tell a joke. Or, you know, have a natter or whatever, preferably with somebody that you get on well with. I'm guessing here because I don't have co-workers.
You talk to a cat.
I could talk to a cat. So, and the good feeling then comes from you've walked away from whatever it was that you were doing that was boring you. You've chatted to somebody who's made you feel good, and you've gone back to your desk and carried on. Mm-hmm. Completely bypassing the biscuit.
Okay.
It's all about bypassing the biscuit.
Bypass those biscuits.
Yeah. And, you know, if your habit is that you carry with you sweets in your bag, and when you're hungry you snack on your sweets, stick some peanuts in there or, you know, some dried fruit or something. Because it's not what you eat that's the problem. It's the trigger routine reward thing. Mm. So it's really easy it's not easy. It's really simple to change your habits. It's not necessarily easy to change them, but once you know what you're doing, it becomes much simpler.
Okay.
What would you want to change? Maybe at work or something. For me, it might be kind of one of my things is that when I'll get distracted. I get distracted really easily by stuff. And my trigger is often that I've been working on something for ages and then I might get stuck. And so I'll think, oh, I'm stuck. I need to clear my mind. I'll just check Facebook for 5 minutes. Only it isn't 5 minutes. It's half an hour because you get sucked into a wormhole of cat videos and nonsense.
Cats have featured quite a lot in this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So my popping onto Facebook for just 5 minutes isn't 5 minutes. And then I feel like shit because it's a complete waste of half an hour. Mm-hmm. So what I do instead now... And I don't always succeed in this, by the way. I'm not like this amazing person who succeeds in stuff. But what I do now is when I start feeling like I'm getting distracted and I feel the urge to go on Facebook and waste half an hour, what I'll do is stand up and do 5 sun salutations, which are they're yoga poses. Mm-hmm. I'll do 5 sun salutations, which is also a form of meditation, which is quite nice. And then I'll sit down and come back. And I'll often find that complete break and emptying my mind of anything to do with anything. Because the other thing is Facebook fills your brain with distractions as well. Mm. If you go ahead and, go off and do 5 minutes of yoga and then come back, or 5 minutes of whatever the hell it is that you're doing. You might play a musical instrument, you might go for a walk or whatever. You might also find that it clears your brain and you can carry on with what you were doing. Mm.
This is probably one of the reasons why a lot of people smoke cigarettes at work. At least one of the guys I work with deliberately stands up, goes outside, has a cigarette, comes back and carries on with his work, and that's his habit.
Yeah. So, how easy would it be to replace that cigarette? And cigarettes is probably a little bit, it's slightly different because there's a physical addiction there.
The reward is very large.
The reward is very large, and there is an actual physical addiction as well. It's physically painful to stop smoking. But he would find it a lot easier to stop smoking if he wanted to stop by replacing the cigarette routine with a something else routine.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't replace it with, a basket of cookies, it's probably going to be a better thing to do.
There's not many things worse.
No. So, figure out if you've got a bad habit, and everybody's got bad habits, if you've got a bad habit, figure out what it is. Because for me, it's wasting time on the internet, and it pisses me off. I get annoyed with myself. Identify your habit, but spend some time identifying the trigger and the reward. So what it is that causes you to do the bad thing and what you get out of it. And then find out how you can change the routine. So what can you put in place of the bad habit to make it a good habit?
Okay.
Really, it really is that simple, and it's, not necessarily easy, but it's simple, I think. So there you go.
Cool.
Crash course in neuroscience and habits. Really do read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. It's a really interesting read, and it's a very good read as well, because the guy was a journalist, so he's not actually a neuroscientist. He's done a lot of study, and he's a journalist, and so he writes really well. So it's not your usual kind of dry textbook. I read it in one sitting, and then I listened to it as well.
Right.
On Audible. So yeah, there you go. Habits. Make good habits. Make one of your habits email marketing, guys. Write an email every day. If you're on my email list, you know that I write an email every day. It's by far the most profitable thing that you could do, in my humble but correct opinion.
Humble but correct opinion.
Yeah. I've pinched that from Ben Settle. He always says humble but correct opinion.
Nice.
It's true, though. It is a humble but correct opinion. Which brings me on neatly to next week we'll be talking about email marketing.
Email marketing.
Yeah, which is also coincidentally what my Small Business Superheroes Inner Circle newsletter is about in February.
Blimey.
I know, it's going to be a step-by-step, blow-by-blow guide to how to, make a shitload of money with email marketing, basically.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's been requested by one of my members. And if you would like to join my Small Business Superheroes, you can go to businessforsuperheroes.com/inner-circle and join us. So we'll see you at the same time next week, talking about email marketing. Thanks very much for listening.
See ya.
Like what you've just heard? Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, send them to www.businessforsuperheroes.com/podcast.